It was once said, kickers are like toilets. When they're working right, nobody notices. And I always thought that was a great analogy on how kickers are can be underappreciated and they often go unnoticed until they make a mistake. Because most times when they make a mistake, you find yourself in a deep mess. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. Now that the opening quote about kickers may or may not have been said by ex NFL player and head coach Mike Ditka, but when I went back tried to find out who did say it, his name came up more times than not as the originator of the quote. But I couldn't find a video clip or direct quote from him to prove it. So unconfirmed, that quote came from Mike Ditka. And I remember it back in the 80s. That's why I'm kind of believing it might have been a Mike Ditka quote. And it kind of being a thrown around back then is it was originally said by someone and kind of taken as a joke. But I think it was a 100% accurate portrayal of kickers because they were largely taken for granted, almost considered an afterthought on your roster. It's an outdated thinking now for sure because look, and this is largely through players um, in the 80s, mid late 80s, and into the 90s, like Morton Anderson and Gary Anderson that started off, and then you can start, the Mike Vanderjags, the Stephen Gutowskis, rolling all the way through to Justin Tucker in the modern day, Harrison Butker being another one. That these guys took that position and made it into a weapon, both special teams and kickoff, and scoring points because these guys could score an awful lot of them. And the Saints fans, those of us old enough to remember old Morton, Moore was winning games with a great defense led by the old Dome Patrol and Martin Anderson banging 4, 5, 6 field goals, often from long range, to walk out of the dome with a win. So they really have become weapons, continue to be weapons, and could go back to being weapons on kickoff again because with the new upcoming NFL changes to the kickoff return rule, it's gonna be very important because they're basically forcing or going to be forcing more and more returns, and the accuracy from the kicker kicking off is going to become very very important. So that gets us to training camp because right now it is of utmost importance for the Saints, whether it be Blake Grupe or Charlie Smythe, they're going to battle it out for the chance to become the New Orleans Saints kicker on the roster this year. And we really need a weapon to emerge from that group or from those two. So Blake Grupe is going to be considered the incumbent here in this potential little kickoff we'll be having in training camp between Blake Grupe and Charlie Smythe. And Grupe, it's kind of just a weird year for him as a kicker last year. Just looking at the PFF grades, just real quick, his kicking grade for his place kicking 60%. Not the greatest. That's pretty much a flat C, bordering towards getting towards the failing side of it. Um, his kickoffs, he graded much higher, kind of going into his accuracy and maybe even lack of leg strength, but not a high percentage of returns, not a very high percentage of return yardage. And he was basically his returns netted somewhere around 24 and a half yard line field position, basically the 25, almost as if it was a touchback. So kind of graded out pretty decently for that. Um, the real thing about Groupie is he was 81% on his kicks. He was 30 of 37. By comparison, Justin Tucker, who's considered one of the premier kickers in the league, was 32 of 37, 84% is generally the accepted kind of norm field goal. That's where the top kickers really are going to hover 84 or above. And those two extra kicks that Tucker made basically put him at 86%. So two kicks can mean a lot. And remember the 2 kick number because we're gonna break down Groupie's misses. Whew, on the year. Um, and it's it's I mean, kind of I guess timing is everything would be the way to explain this because he didn't he wasn't awful, but at times we felt like he was. Because I think there's some just his misses tended to be insanely crucial in some instances. Um, first first kick he missed all year was the with basically a minute left to go. He missed the 46 yarders against the Packers in a game we lost 18-17. Something you would normally hang in on a kicker and tear him up, over the whole deal, which he kind of was as far as that. And he gets lost in the fact that the Saints were up 17 nothing headed in the fourth quarter and blew a 17-point lead before it even came to him missing that kick. So it wasn't all on Groupie, but hey, kid, if you make a 46-yarder, you have a chance to bail us out and we get that win. Then you move on to the Texans game. He missed two there. He missed 52-yarder on the opening drive, and he missed the 29-yarder later in the game in the fourth quarter. Jags, the Saints opening drive, missed a 51-yarder. Starting to see a little pattern develop there. And when you get to the Bears game, he had a miss from 47 with 2:30 left to go in the game. Now, that was a 7-point lead. We had a larger lead during the game when all of a sudden the Bears started mounting some Green Bay Packers type comeback. And that game all of a sudden got real interesting in the fourth quarter, down to one score. Saints get a little drive going. And with 2.5 minutes left to go in the game, he bangs a 47-yarder, puts us up two scores, and we can all breathe easier. Instead, he misses. Bears get the ball back, and all of a sudden start flirting with the fact they may come back and tie this game up. We get a defensive stand. They turn it over on downs. We kneel it, and we walk out of there. But still, that game got very contentious at the end, and he missed what really should have been a makeable kick to help ice the game and go up two scores. The Falcons game this is what I'm really thinking, just the anomaly of his year kicking, because we lost the game 24-15. All 15 points were scored by Grupe. He made the first 5 field goals on the day, but with a minute 21 left, and we're basically down 2 scores, he misses a 40-yarder. That would at least cut it to 1 score. Now we somehow would have had to magically get the ball back and go score again to have any shot in the game, but that was a miss that basically it sealed the deal. The game was over, all intents and purposes. I think pretty sure Atlanta even just kneeled it out from there, and that was done. And then against Panthers, we won going away. He missed a 20 again on the opening Saints drive, missed a 29-yarder. Those two 29-yarders he missed on the year basically is the difference between him finishing kind of in the Justin Tucker territory, where you kind of get into that closer to that upper echelon of kickers as far as percentage made. And instead, he kind of slides back down at 81. As you're getting in the numbers there at 81 into 80 into the 70s, you start approaching missing one out of every 4 kicks. You're going to make your team very, very nervous, and 1 or 2 kicks away from being in that territory. So it's a fine line, and it is a razor thin margin, but it's very, very important. He's got to get a little better at that. And we'll talk a little more about that in a minute, because first, let's go over Mr. Charlie Smythe. Um, yeah, not a lot to go on here. We do know he's from Northern Ireland. Big guy, 6'4", like 210, 215. And I learned something today, or yesterday actually, when I was going through the research for this. There's a thing called Gaelic football. Never heard of it, didn't really know what it was. Still kind of don't know what it is. But he was a former goalkeeper. He was a goalie for a Gaelic football team in Northern Ireland. And what I could kind of come up with is Gaelic football is like Irish soccer, maybe with a little like uh, Australian rules, football, rugby, some other, all kind of mixed in. So this is my thumbs up request for the day. If you actually know what Gaelic football is and can reasonably explain the game to me, hit a thumbs up, drop down in the comments, and kind of, you might even close on that. I just, what is it? But what we do know is his experience in that, and I still don't even kind of understand the professional league, but I think it's one of those deals where there's kind of like smaller leagues where you work your way up to getting a little bigger paycheck and more prestige, I guess. But he was in that kind of system, working his way up. Got involved um, with the NFL International Player Pathway Program. And I know that's one of the programs, I think kickers especially, but I think there's been a few other players around the league at various positions that kind of get discovered through this program. They're brought in and can get a tryout, or in the case of Charlie Smythe, got him invited to the 2024 combine, uh, where he was, the only numbers I could really find there was 12 of 16 on his kicks at the combine for 75%. And not quite the accuracy you're looking for. A little better on his NFL Pro Day, 8 of 10 to get up to 80%. But in that one, he had a long of 60. So that's kind of where you're sitting with the background on the two. We know a lot more about Grupe. We watched him all year. There was more information coming in. He's always been a field goal kicker coming, through his football career, ending in college at Notre Dame before winding up here, where Smythe is coming from a completely different sport, but apparently kicking's still a big part of it. And he's a big, strong, tough guy with a leg, and that seems to be readily apparent in everything that's covering him when his name comes up. Because we're going to go start talking about OTAs and minicamp, and that's where his name really started coming up because they were just raving about this guy's big leg. They just kicked the crap out of it, and kind of looking back on that over the weeks of OTAs and in the mini camp when it was getting talked about, it started reminding me very similar to the reports on Spencer Rattler's huge arm in his part, like we covered last week for the backup quarterback position, almost to the point they kind of were forgetting there was another guy there involved, a guy who was a little older with a years more experience involved, and maybe not with the physical traits that the media and everybody covering was kind of gushing all over, but going, hey, the guy can play too. And in this case, you Smythe's big leg against groupies, kind of experience and maybe accuracy. Because the other thing that to take away from is, I think it was one of the minicamp press conferences after minicamp. One of these, I don't know who it is, and I don't mean this in a bad way because I understand getting excited by a guy who's just really big at 6'4", 215, kicking the crap out of a ball downfield and booming it and going, huh, what's this all about? So whoever was asked Dennis Allen, and they basically asked him, well, how far can he kick it? And Dennis Allen's like, I don't know, he can probably kick it 70 yards, but the question is how accurate. Going, I mean, yeah, big leg's nice, but if he can't kick it where we need him to kick it, which is mainly through the goalpost, but also becoming very important on the new kickoff rules that the NFL implemented, that's basically going to force more returns, and we need the ball kicked specifically there. Well, the big leg doesn't do him any good without accuracy. And getting back to Groupie, we know Groupie doesn't have a huge leg. Um, but when he would get in his grooves, I mean, like, look, he banged 5 against Atlanta. You know, asking him to kick the 6. Now you're entering Morton Anderson territory, basically. But I mean, it is what it is. For the most part, he was accurate. But at key times, that's when it seemed to be like, come on, man. And before we get into really talking about Smythe versus Grupe, do you have to mention that, and I will probably be doing a video on this within the next week or two, but Saints special team coach Darren Rizzi gave an interview, much like the ones we've been seeing from DA and Benton and Kubiak and all, but it was a lot on special teams and specifically a lot on the new NFL kickoff rules, which he's saying it's basically forcing more returns. He even mentions, look, you have to look at the kickoffs now. That is the first play, offensive and defensive play of the drive now. It's no longer a special team kickoff. It's a little more, I mean, I think he even used the phrase a little more offense and defensive component, what's going on there because of the rule changes. And it's going to create more returns. Not going to break it down now what all the rule changes are. Probably most people are at least somewhat familiar with what they did. And if not, there's some good coverage out there you can go find to break it down for you. But the biggest thing is there's like a catch box, I think they call it, but it's the area from sideline to sideline, 20 to the goal line on the receiving team. Ball's got to land in there. That's where the returners are. They can't fair catch it. They got to get the ball and get it out of there and try to return it. If ball winds up long in the end zone, basically touchback situation, but instead of the 25, it now comes out to the 30. Here's the kicker. No pun intended. If the kicker kicks the ball out of bounds or short of the 20-yard line where it doesn't reach that box where the returners are, the return box, well, that's treated just like the ball had been kicked out of bounds, and now it comes all the way back to the 40. So now you're in a situation where they prefer, I mean, it used to be it comes out 25, just banging out the back of the end zone or into the end zone. Now it's, well, that's going to come out to the 30. You got to try to land it in that box and make them return it. That's the best chance we have of holding them back in field position. But if you miss, if it's too short or it goes out of bounds either way, we're getting the ultimate penalty because they're getting to start off on their own 40. It's a hefty penalty of field position if you can't kick the ball accurately in the box. So it is now a big deal about being accurate on your kicks. And the huge takeaway on all this for the Saints is once again, and I'm going to invoke last week's backup quarterback video. You got two young players who looks like they both have some type of ability, much like Rattler and Hayner. So you can develop, hopefully, a young player into a long-term solution for you. Or this is not going to continuously be some kind of problem. Not saying either one of these guys has a chance of ever becoming a Morton Anderson, but if you could produce a Martin Anderson at kicker right now in their first or second year and be able to hang on to him for a long time, like Baltimore did with Justin Tucker, I just keep going back to him. He's the best example of it. He's been there a long time, and he is still a terror. He's still a weapon. He still scores a lot of points, and he's never left Baltimore. That's just a crutch they've had with them since they got him as a rookie. That's a valuable piece to have on your team. And the Saints have a chance to develop it. Look, in Grupe, technically may be the more accurate kicker. We don't really know because, and we'll find out training camp and preseason, especially when you've got a chance to see what Smythe can do. But Grupe may be the more accurate kicker, but he's got to be more accurate than he was last year, and specifically from less than 50, because we know he starts struggling because the leg isn't super strong. You start moving him from 50 and further out, it's going to be a little more of a struggle for him. But he's got to be money inside the 40. He can't miss in the 40, inside the 40. I mean, period, end of story. He can't miss inside the 40. He damn sure can't miss 229 yarders, which is basically chip shots, about the easiest scenario he's going to come up with. So Smythe, on the other hand, is going to give you a security of being able to kick the ball over 50. And if he's accurate enough to make this team, and it kind of sounds like Rizzi and Allen want them to be very accurate, Well, that's a little change on the offensive philosophy compared to what was going on last year when you had Groupie. Because when it became, kind of obvious, look, we really don't want him to kick it beyond 50. You started seeing, and it really reared its ugly head in the Rams game. Started seeing where they were getting in these weird spots on the field on fourth down where it was like, if we let him kick it, that's 50 plus. We don't really want that. We don't want to give them any good field position. So even if we bring Headley out and he's not able to pin him in and gets in the end zone, they're coming out to the 20. There's not really a benefit there. And I think they were just kind of talking themselves into going for some of those crazy fourth downs. The Rams game being the one that they kept doing it. And it just came back and bit them on the ass. When you do roll out with a guy with a huge leg where you're going, yeah, man, he can drill a ball from 50 and do it accurately 50, 51, 52, 53. Well, all of a sudden, you're just going to take the points right there. And under the new kickoff rules, if he hits from 54 and you take the points right there, now you kick him back off to the Rams, and you definitely don't want to give that offense field position. So now when you're kicking off to him, now he's got to be accurate to kicking inside that little kicker's box with the new rules, cover the kick to make sure you keep him pinned back. And now let's go play defense. I mentioned that to say this. One of the things Rizzy talked about and other special team coaches around the league have talked about, kickers will now more than likely have to be involved with playing some type of safety role as the kickoff team, the last guy back there, and possibly having to run up in there and try to make a tackle. Well, Smythe with the big leg also happens to have a big body at 6'4, 210, 215. Grupe's roughly about my size, 5'6, 5'7, what, a buck 80, buck 70. Could play into this. Now it won't be the end all be all. Smythe's going to have to prove a lot more other than his ability to be a special teamer. But it is something to consider. If you start getting a lot of returns out there and you're basically 10 on 11 because you can't rely on your kicker to be able to get involved and be able to do something, could be a problem. So it may be a concern. But the bottom line is both kickers must prove they can make the kicks. They should never miss. That's one thing. 29, nobody should miss from 29, and Grupe did it twice. Make the big kicks when it counts, when the team really, really needs them. Understand and how unfair it is, especially as a young player, as a rookie, or even a second-year guy in Grupe's case, to keep finding yourself in position where the team has done something to force you at the last minute to come out on the field, and basically, for a kicker, you have to make the big play because you got to drill the big kick. I get it. Blowing a 17-point lead in Green Bay and Grupe missing the kick was not all Grupe's fault. I know. I understand. But at the same time, dang it, kid, please make the kick so we can just sneak out of there with the win and we can go bitch at the defense during the week. If they're not capable of making accurate kicks, and now we're going to include the kickoff on this, they're not capable of making accurate kicks, and especially if they're not able to make kicks in crunch times when we really, really need it, whether it's to ice a game or win a game or anything in between, or hey, make a kick in the second quarter, a 29-yarder, just so we can get a little momentum going and try to climb back in the game when we're down, or piling on a little momentum on the other team if we're up and saying, well, we couldn't quite get in the end zone, but let's make sure we get three. You can't miss those. So you got them. They have to make the kicks they're supposed to make. I hate to kick in the word always, but to make the kicks they're always supposed to make. Make the kicks inside the 40. I think both these guys, you have to be money inside the 40 in the modern NFL. If you don't do that, we're going to wind up back in some type of groupie situation that we were in last year. So this has got to be solved. I don't know if it's going to be one of these two. I don't know if we may not see some veteran kicker. It may be out there or may get cut during the preseason from another team because he loses a kicker. Somebody else coming in. But for right now, these are the two guys. And for right now, be accurate. Make your kicks. Can't say it enough. Make the kicks you're supposed to make. make the kicks, the big kicks when you really, really need them. Otherwise, could be a problem. Could be a big problem. So there you have it. Upcoming kicker battle in training camp, obviously. Who do you think's going to win? Who do you think has a shot? Is it one of these two guys, or will we see a veteran coming in? Maybe in training camp, maybe a little after. Who knows? I have no confidence in Smythe just because I haven't seen a thing on him, and he just kind of sounds like a project with a big leg coming out of nowhere. I have some up and down shaky confidence in Grupe. Um, just don't know if it's enough to want to turn the kicking game over to him. So let me know what you think. Go ahead, drop some comments. I'll get to them. I'll respond, and we'll see what you have to say. So thanks for joining. Till next time. Peace out. Who dat?